Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum to my Muslim student. Hi everyone. Let's continue with our next topic. We have construction material. The class, the student is able to first identify the term metal. What is the definition of the metal? You must be able to explain what will be the properties of the metal. Explain what will be the product. Maybe you are able to sketch and then explaining the specification writing, and last one you may need to explain what will be the uses of metal in the construction. Okay, now let's we go to the next one, the category of the metal and the definition. Okay, let's we look at this slide. What will be the definition? Okay, a metal can be defined as the element which is readily formed positive ion, and normally when you look at the metal, you can see that the color is like gray, and then the brownish, there will be a lot of category. Metal is like the big family, then after that you can see the category under ferrous or non-ferrous. Okay, so when we talk about the metal, we always think about the strength, we always think about the thermal conductivity, we always think about the electrical conductivity. This will be the relationship when we explain about metal and the uses and also the characteristic. A solid material which is typically hard, shiny, malleable, fusible and ductile, which having good electrical conductivity and also thermal conductivity. So these are the example of the product, or these are the example of the category for the metal. We have iron, we have coal, we have silver, aluminium alloy, and we also have one of the example is steel. Steel is actually a combination of iron plus the carbon. Okay, look at this photo. This one the example, these two are the example of the application of the steel in the construction. So basically what you can see here, steel is one of the product under one of the category under metal that can be used for the structure that are able to receive the load. Okay, and what we have learned before under the concrete, you can also see that the steel is able to give the tension strength to the concrete, and this one also can be used as the loading structure. Okay, so let's we go to the next one. When we explain about metal, okay, look at the manufacturing process. Okay, it is actually come from the pig iron. This is the example of the pig iron. Okay, the steel process can be divided into the iron ore, or we call this one as pig iron. This is what I did mention, and then we have to refine the pig iron to become steel. This is one of the production process, and then forming the steel into the product. This is the example where you can get the sources of the metal from the pig iron, that means from the ore. Okay, so this is one of the famous material that we have in the construction under metal. We have steel, but then you can see in the surrounding, let's say you are in the room, you can see that the surrounding part of the window are covered with the aluminium. And then let's say you look at the knob set, that one also extrusion, and there are drawing process. And if you remember previously, we are talking about annealing. Okay, annealing is where you have to heat the ore in very high temperature, then you can get the sources of or the production or the category of the metal under that. Okay, and then after you go to the melting process and annealing process, we have to cast to the shape by using this method. We have sand casting, we have die casting, and also investment casting. But then we have to consider also another finishing part for the production of the steel. We have to go through the machining, and also you have to consider what will be the type of the jointing that will be required for a certain product. Okay, let's go to the next one. These are the properties of the metal in general. Okay, what I did mention previously, when we talk about the steel, it is something that we have to deal with the strength. Okay, you look at the photo that I showed you before, it is used for the structural part of the building. So we are talking about the strength, we are talking about the toughness. Okay, we have to consider about the hardness, ductility, malleability, elasticity, and plasticity. You can also see that the steel can be bent, the metal can be bent, okay, by using the machine, and also you need to have the skill worker to bend all this product. Okay, let's we look at the first one, the strength. The metal enable a when we talk about this, the strength, it is enable a metal to resist deformation under the load. So this is what I did mention. If you would like to consider the properties of the metal to be used as the structure in the construction. Okay, for the toughness, enable the metal to withstand the shock and to be deformed without rupturing. Okay, this is about the toughness, and basically the toughness and the strength are interrelated. Then when we talk about the hardness, this is the properties to resist the permanent indentation. When we talk about the ductility, it is to enable the metal to stretch, the bend, to twist without cracking or breaking. The level of the ductility where from the straight you can bend. And then if you remember when we go through the example of the reinforcing bar, the reinforced bar is not only straight, but if you buy it is straight, but then it can be bent. Let's say this is the reinforcing bar inside the pad footing. You can see originally it is straight, but it can be bent. That is the properties of the ductility and malleability. Elasticity and plasticity is the ability of the material to absorb the force and the flex in different direction, returning to the longitudinal and also original position. Okay, and then based on this photo, you can see that metal have a lot of product and a lot of color. Basically, when we look at the brownish color, we are talking about we are thinking about copper. And then when we look at the yellowish color, we are talking about the brass. And then the rest normally are grey in color, basically grey in color. Only the raw iron we can see a bit brownish plus orange a little bit. Okay, that one is in terms of finishing part. It can be painted later for the preservation and to avoid corrosion. Okay, look at the example of the product we have here: cast iron, we have wrought iron, we have aluminium, normally used for the framing. They're still used for the reinforcing bar in the building. Copper can be used as part of the air conditioning components. The zinc can be used for the roofing. The brass can be used for the architectural purposes, maybe for the piping. You can see for the knob side. You can see this one also used as the hinges to hang the door and the frame. Okay, the carbon steel can be used for the structure, can be used for the architecture, can be used for the hand railing, the lead, the tin, titanium, and also the alloy steel. These are the example of the product for the metal. Okay, so after this, when we look at the category, you can see where this one comes from. Okay, I go to the first one, the type of the metal from the iron ore. Okay, from the iron ore, or you have to heat this one from the pig iron, where after you heat you can see that there are two categories. One is ferrous, another one is non-ferrous. When you look at the word ferrous, the word ferrous are referring to the material or the component where there are a lot of ferrum. Okay, non-ferrous means less component or no ferrum at all inside the component in terms of the chemical components inside. Now if you look at on the top, for the ferrous metal we have iron and we have steel. So iron is one of the product. If you put iron plus carbon, then you can get the steel. Okay, so from the iron we have cast iron, we have wrought iron, and then from the steel you can see they are low carbon, and then we have mild carbon steel, medium carbon, high carbon, and then if you look at the last one here, we have stainless steel where the color is shining, normally used for the architectural purposes. Okay, and normally the last one for the stainless steel not required to be painted. Okay, for the non-ferrous we have brass. This is where you can see in yellowish color, the copper normally in orange and brownish color, then aluminium um, like water drink can, and this is normally used for the framing of the doors and the windows. Lead and tin used for part of the roofing and part of the finishing and architectural part. So these are basically the category of the metal in general. Okay. Now let's look at the actual definition. This is what I did mention. Ferrous containing a substantial means a big amount. Substantial means a big amount, huge amount or proportion of the iron. In chemical, Fe is referring to ferrum. Okay. For the non-ferrous containing no iron, or sometimes they have iron but very low proportion of the iron as compared to the ferrous. That's why you can see we divide it into these two because the category are basically similar. And then the reaction with the carbon and atmosphere also will be different if this one is properly categorized. And if you understand the actual properties, you can see that non-ferrous normally not easily corrode, but for the ferrous it is easily corrode. Okay, so especially for the steel, um, if you compare with brass, if you compare with the copper, you can see the copper and brass is not corrode. Okay, so let's relook at the next one. For the ferrous metal, it is actually all forms of iron and steel. Iron is the original part, and then if you add in with the carbon, then you can get steel. Okay, in terms of the production, this ferrous metal is manufactured to meet the wide variety of the specification in terms of the product, in terms of the design, in terms of the loading specification or load that required to be received by the elements or by the design itself to meet the specific requirement as shown in the building, for example. And then chemical composition and internal structure is normally controlled during the manufacturing process. In terms of the composition here, this is what we are talking about, the component of the steel as, as compared with the proportion of the steel, because in terms of the steel also we have a lot of product. So when you control this proportion, it will actually produce different type of the steel at the end of the day. Okay, it also produces a good strength and hard fabricated in the shop to desired size and shape. This is what I did mention. Also, it can be related with the specification. This is for the ferrous metal. Okay, so we go to the first category under ferrous metal. We have iron. This is the basic constituent of the steel, because before you add in the carbon, you may see that this is the iron. It is produced in the blast furnace. You can see this is also the term that you have seen before when we learned about glazing. It can be produced into commercial form to produce grey and white cast iron. After you go through the manufacturing process, they are another category. Okay, there is also one of the relationship when we talk about the iron with the carbon production. Increase the amount of carbon, decrease the melting point of the metal. So you can see here, if I ask you what would be the relationship to increase the melting point, at the same time to give the implication with the proportion of the carbon. So that will be the relationship. Carbon will exert the most significant effect on the microstructure and properties of the iron product. So you can see that at the end, the product will be different based on the proportion of the carbon that we have in the during the manufacturing process. Okay, so under iron, one of the category that we are going to look at after this is wrought iron. Every time we look at the wrought iron, we always think about Eiffel Tower because this is one of the famous creation, famous building we have seen before. Okay, it is normally used as a major building until the cost of making low carbon steel is lowered. So basically, before the production of the low carbon steel is, the cost of making low carbon steel is lowered. We are means reduced. We may apply to use wrought iron. It is used extensively where corrosion resistance is needed. You can see the application also suitable for the construction near to the seawater, used for the complex shaping or the decorative iron work. Nowadays, a lot of people use ironwork as part of the grill or part of the fencing system in their house. It also ideal to be used for the external work because it has very good corrosion resistance has good resistance to the impact damage as well, has resistance to the corrosion of the steel due to the formation of oxide coating, which is fairly homogeneous. Homogeneous means one. Okay, you have as oxide coating inside, so that will cause the type of this material to have better corrosion resistant. Okay, as compared to the steel. That would be the category number one under red iron. Then if you look at this photo, this is the famous creation made from the wrought iron, and this is the history how the Eiffel Tower is being created stage by stage. Okay, it can be worked, it can be forged, and it can be welded like the steel. What is the definition of the forging? You can refer to this statement. It is a working metal to predetermined shape by one or more processes, such as hammering, pressing, and rolling at a temperature above the recrystallization structure of the material. Then we also can see that in terms of the manufacturing, this wrought iron is used for the co-working, is using co-working. That is the process where the working at they will produce this one working at the temperature that doesn't alter the structural changes caused by the work, or that is below the recrystallization temperature. So at the end, you can see that the implication and the end product for this one will be different. Okay. Another properties of the wrought iron is it has low carbon steel. It has very less proportion of the steel. It is about 0.1% carbon by weight. Okay, this is the ratio that normally you can see in the manufacturing process. In terms of the ductility, it is lower than the steel. The tensile strength is low than the steel. It can be molded easily, but very good resistant to the corrosion. So this is one of the important features that you have to know, important properties that you have to know for this wrought iron. Okay, in terms of the uses, it can be used to make pipe, corrugated sheet. Corrugated sheet can be used for the piling, can be used for the roofing, can be used for part of the cladding. Okay, the crane hook, this is for the crane production, and then for the grill, fencing, the bars, the chain, and other product. The chains here can be also part of the ironmongery, like the knob set. You can see used for the knob set for the ironmongery means finishing or accessory for the doors and the window. Okay, so that can be one of the production and one of the uses for the wrought iron. We move to the second one. We have the cast iron. It has the greatest amount of the carbon if we compare with the wrought iron. Basically, the amount and form of carbon could affect the strength, the hardness, the brittleness, and stiffness of the cast iron. As compared to the first one, you can see that the percentage for the wrought iron is only 0.1%, but this one has more than a wrought iron. That is in terms of general comparison. Adding a carbon to increase Adding carbon to iron increase the hardness and the strength, but lowers the ductility, means it is not easily bent. If you refer to the definition and also the main properties of the ductility, that will be the comparison. Yes, you can increase the hardness, but then in terms of reshaping, in terms of getting the actual shape for the bending purposes, it is a little bit lower as compared to if you add in less carbon. Cast iron has high compressive strength, but it has a low tensile strength. That is also one of the properties that you have to take note. And basically, there are two types of cast iron. We have grey and white, normally because of the color. Grey cast iron are grey in color. White cast iron is normally, in terms of the fracture, it is really white in color. Okay, let's look at the first one, basic usage of the grey cast iron that you normally seen. Okay, this is the grey cast iron, normally at the car, at the lorry part, near to the tire of the vehicles. The grey cast iron are also known as ordinary cast iron, owing the color of the fracture. Means the color itself is already grey, that contains free carbon, or we call this one as the graphite flake. They make the metal weak and the soft. but then it contains high carbon content and large number of the graphite flake that give the gray appearance to the fractured surface. Okay, then it is most widely used cast iron as compared to the white cast iron and have poor ductility. So please take note on the second and the third sentence here to make the comparison. What will be the implication if you put in more carbon? What will be the implication if you put high carbon? Okay, um, high carbon content will produce the hardness but lower the ductility. It contains high carbon content and large numbers of the graphite flake, but then it also contains free carbon. If you put this one that contains less carbon, it will make the metal to be weak and soft. So that will be the comparison in terms of the properties that I would like everyone to take note for the grey cast iron as compared to the raw iron. These are the advantages of the grey cast iron. They have low melting point. It can be alloy, means it can be added with another material. They have excellent bearing properties. This is in terms of the ductility, the hardness, the strength. It is easy to cast, especially for the large complex shapes. And then it is relatively cheap. It is not cheap all the time, depending on the size, depending on the thickness, specification, and so on. It can be heat treated, means it can be alloy, means it can be heat treated. It can be produced. It can be used to produce the alloy. It have excellent damping properties, means ability to absorb the noise and vibration, and definitely excellent machinability due to the high ductility um, as compared to another material. So these are the advantages of the cast iron, but you have to read it with the scenario or with the situation that is needed. We move to the second part of the cast iron. We have white cast iron. So this white cast iron is called in such name due to the fracture surface that has the silvery white metallic color as compared to the first one that is really gray, and it is a bit dark gray in color. Carbon is combined chemically with the iron in form of cementite that makes this metal strong, hard, and brittle. It's easily bend, harder and more resistant to wear from abrasion as compared to the great cast iron. If you look at this important properties, okay, they have also high compressive strength, high compressive strength as compared to the first one. Okay, we move to the second category under ferrous. We have done for the wrought iron, we have done for the cast iron. So wrought iron is number one, number two we have cast iron, and then the cast iron is divided into two. One is white, another one is grey. So I move to the second one. Under ferrous metal we have steel. This is normally used as a structural element and the lightweight cladding components, and also can be used for the ironmongery and for architectural purposes. Every time we talk about architectural purpose, you have to take note that this one is designed not to receive the load, but then for the structural purposes, it is a structure, it is the component that is designed in the building to receive the load and able to transfer and transmit to the ground evenly. Steel, which is the most important ferrous metal, it is an alloy of iron and carbon, means iron plus carbon. Okay, in terms of the production and in terms of the proportion of the carbon, steel may be defined as the steel containing less than 0.25% carbon and includes steel referred to as mild steel and also high yield steel. Okay, this is the symbol that normally you can see in the construction drawing. For example, when we talk about mild steel, we normally see this one used for the bar reinforcement, the symbol is R, and then for the high yield steel, you can see the symbol is either T or the symbol is either Y. Let's say you look at the symbol Y10. This is referring to the high tensile 10 mm diameter, because this one normally used as the bar for the reinforcing steel. Okay, but we did not only limited to the bars, but you can see after this there are a lot of products use steel in the construction, mainly in different shape and in different purposes. Okay, now let's look at the properties of the steel. Its widespread application for structural uses is an account of the following properties, means if I ask you what would be the reason why the steel is used in the construction, okay, why steel is one of the selective material that normally used for the construction. Okay, look at the first one, the properties of the steel. It is relatively abundant with the earth crust, and this is the second only to aluminum. This is um, in terms of the nature of the product, in terms of the nature of how the steel is being used and how the steel is being applied. Its melting point is sufficiently high to produce high strength of the product, but not so high as to give problem reaching to its temperature. So in terms of adding the carbon, in terms of the controlling the melting point, this is one of the key points to 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 be one of the reason why the steel is suitable to be used and to be one of the selective material in the construction, especially if you would like to use for the structural purposes. Iron undergoes a changed crystal structure at great heat, which exists in many production process and lead to the metallurgical advantages. So that will be the in general in terms of the nature. So it's only is used not only as the integral part. When we talk about integral part, means inside the structure, such as reinforcing bars, um, but also it is suitable to be exposed as part of the architectural ornamental expression. Ornamental means it is used for the decorative purposes. Okay, you can see that the steel also suitable to be used for the space framing, for the arch. Space frame means the large opening of the frame that not required support in between. Okay, and also can be used for the arch for the large span. For example, let's say I show you this sketch. You normally see something like this used for the portal framing. This is what we call as portal framing, used for the futsal court or maybe the warehouse. So open space means this opening. Look at my arrow. This opening is wide. So we may apply this structural framing that is using steel as one of the material. Unobstructed floors areas such as for the convention hall. It also can be used for the exhibition spaces, ornamental metalwork to enhance the appearance of the building due to the color, especially if you choose stainless steel, maybe that one is shining and that one will give a beautiful impact to the building as the finishing part. Okay, that is the properties of the steel. Okay, look at one of the example of the famous application in the building. We have low carbon steel product, weldable structural steel. We have cold roll steel. This one also is suitable to be used for the window framing, reinforcing bars. This is normally integral part of the building, expanded metal and wire for the bonding ties. This is normally to join between the brick, and then to join between the brick when you would like to construct for the cavity wall, or to join between the column and the brick. For example, you can look at the last one. This is your column, and then there are bricks used for the wall. Okay, so this is the brick on the right hand side. So in order to construct, to join between, this is the wall, you need to install the bonding ties. Let's say I change the color, so the bonding ties is this one. Okay, to join between the column, this is the column and this is the wall. Normally we call this one as the extruded bar reinforcement coming out from the column to join between the wall, because this wall is designed as the non-load bearing structure. Okay, so that can be one of the application.